that'd be awesome.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So y'all have questions. This is for what class?
It's a liberal studies class.
Cool.
And
Sounds like a
so
fun
basically
project.
it's like a,
And you have to do a podcast? Is that what I?
yeah, so it's a podcast
yeah.
kind of setup where we'll like introduce you guys and then ask you guys the questions and it'll just kind of flow that way, if that's okay.
Works.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We are ready.
Alrighty.
You are.
It's our favorite subject.
Yeah. I love to talk about what I do.
Yeah.
So with us today, we have Dr. Karen Logsdon, who is the assistant vice SUNY Brockport. And we also have with us Darlene Schmitt, who is the associate director of the Counseling Center and is a licensed mental health counselor. I didn't know if you guys wanted to introduce yourselves at all a little bit, or if we could just roll into it, whatever you feel like.
I mean,
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Karen, you
go
go
ahead.
first.
Oh, okay. Well, interestingly enough, I do have a background in medicine. I do have a registered nursing professional degree, but and I have worked in the field of medical field, and being in student affairs or enrollment management, student affairs, I have never worked so much with mental health than in my past careers. And I do say careers because I don't even know which number career I'm on right now, but I think Brockport does a fabulous job. We are so dedicated and committed to improving what we do, expanding our resources for students, and really putting students first in all that we do.
Mhm.
I'll
Yeah.
pass it on to Darlene.
Yeah, I would second that. So I've been here for 18 years, so I've seen a full generation of students kind of come through, and I do agree that Brockport does a lot, but I also don't always know that students are aware of what we do, right?
Yeah.
So the campus can think we're really doing a good job here supporting our students. We've got A, B, and C set up and X, Y, and Z, and if students don't know about it, then it's not helpful. So we're definitely working on that. But I've been a licensed mental health counselor for my whole career. And I've worked in various different settings. I've worked in the chemical dependency setting, the community mental health setting, primary care, criminal justice, and I've also done private practice as well as work here. So hopefully between Karen and I, we can answer your questions in a way that is helpful.
All right. And so the first thing that we could start with is sort of getting a general look into like mental health and things like that. So I just had some kind of basic questions, like what exactly is mental health and mental illness to you? And in your experience, what are some of the mental health issues that Brockport College students themselves have presented or you've seen on campus?
Absolutely.
Karen, maybe we'll just do Karen first, then me, or you want to?
Sure, and I'll defer, talking about what is, mental illness, but I'll comment on what we see here at the college because I chair our student behavioral consultant team. You've probably never heard of it. It's a multidisciplinary team. It works behind the scenes. It's very confidential, but we get referrals from all over campus, faculty, staff, residents, life staff, university police, all over the place, of genuine concern of our students. So these reports come in, and I am I'm the chair of the team, and I'm also the primary case manager of the team. So I do a lot of work with these students and with the faculty and staff that are concerned about these students. So what are we seeing? Well, COVID kind of changed a little bit of what we're seeing, as you can imagine, but prior to that, typically we have students that are very, very stressed and they are really struggling in the class and will divulge all kinds of information to the faculty member, which they're not comfortable. Some of them aren't comfortable getting that information. Some do a wonderful job responding with the student, kind of supporting them, but they refer them to me. So I work as kind of a liaison with the faculty and the student to kind of help bring that student to the resources they need so they can be successful. But we are also seeing a lot of depression, anxiety, suicide ideation, some really concerning mental health issues. So this team will also get maybe students that are really having some severe mental health issues of orientation, knowing where they are, who they are, and, confusion, and even, but very atypically will we see those higher level mental health issues. Most of our issues are stress related, coping, difficulty coping, feeling overwhelmed, feeling, like they just can't go on another day because they're just so overwhelmed. And some basic needs, they might be food insecurity, housing insecurity, and a whole gamut of other college life issues that you might see. So that's kind of a little bit of what we're seeing. I will say that we get on a weekly basis about 5 new referrals. So as you can imagine, by the end of the semester, we have a pretty big referral list. And this is kind of like a little pinch of what I do. I've got a lot of other things in my job role that I do. But I so enjoy this. I can tell you that it's been very effective. It's a national best practice that we have as a team that we employ. National best practices. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about. Standards that have been established for this kind of work. So we're not making it up as we go. There's a lot of good information out there. So I will pass this on to Darlene.
Okay. So I think sometimes people think of mental health, right? They think, what is mental health versus physical health and mental illness? So think of it in the same way you would think of physical well-being. Physically well. You can be physically well in the sense of you don't have any diseases or chronic issues, but you still may not always feel great physically, but overall you're in good physical health. Same with mental health. You can have more days than not that you probably feel pretty good, but that doesn't mean you're still not going to have bad days or a bad mood, or you're going to respond to something and it's going to feel great, but that doesn't mean you're mentally ill. Does that make sense? So yeah. Mental health thing, it's like happiness is just one of many emotions. So people who are mentally healthy aren't happy all the time necessarily, but maybe they experience pleasurable feelings more often than not. And when they do have a distressing time or a bad situation that creates some distress, they can manage it effectively. That's mental health. Mental illness steps in when the ability to cope with what comes at a person's way, they don't have those abilities, or they feel that they can't manage the level of distress that they're experiencing, and it causes symptoms. And a lot of times those symptoms can be physical symptoms as well. So there's a very huge connection between the mind and the body. Our mind can have mental illness. Let's say someone's depressed, and that can include like stomach, GI distress, headaches, inability to sleep, no appetite, so that's the connection, right? And when we look at, students who come in to see us in the counseling center and they come with this presenting concern, whatever that may be, and then we dig deeper to find out, well, how have you managed things like this in the past? What are your go-to things? And if they, can't recall those things in the current moment, then we try to help them. But sometimes that's not enough, right? So sometimes their mental illness is such that it's disrupting their lives. And so the hallmark symptom of somebody between like a bad, distressing time in their lives versus somebody with a mental illness is how badly are the symptoms of what's happening to you impacting your day-to-day life. Are you not able to go to class? Are you not able to focus on your work? Are you having arguments with your family and your friends? Are you pushing people away? Are you not eating so you have no energy, that kind of thing. And there's usually a duration associated that we look at. It's not just a brief thing, it's usually at least a couple of weeks or longer. So that's kind of the difference. I don't know if that answers your question, like mental health versus mental illness.
Yeah, no, that was great. There's definitely a little bit of a difference and like a nuance to them. So I just wanted a little clarity on the difference.
There's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. So everybody wants to feel healthy, right? Physically healthy and mentally healthy. But sometimes we don't. So, and I think you asked about what we see. And so Karen spoke a lot about, from a macro lens, what we see in students in general post-pandemic. But I can tell you, just from the clinical standpoint, we are seeing the reasons people come to counseling haven't really changed, right? So there's this top 5 nationally that, we do all these studies on national trends in mental health with college students, right? And so every year it's depression and anxiety, and sometimes they're one year it can be depression, the next year it's anxiety. This year, strictly stress related concerns popped up. And then I think it's followed by family and interpersonal relationship distress, right? You can imagine that. Substance use. Those are some of the, I don't remember the 5th one off the top of my head. Oh, adjustment, just regular, like adjusting to college and fitting, there's so much that comes with that people have a hard time. And that doesn't mean that they're mentally ill. It just means they're really struggling, and counseling can be super helpful. So. Did we answer all of that one?
Yeah, no, that was perfect. Thank you. Kind of going off of that and talking about like what we see in Brockport, I also thought maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions that students have at Brockport themselves about mental health and why they might be a little hesitant to reach out for help and things like that.
Oh, absolutely. I can comment a little bit on that, specifically from, some of the referrals that I have worked with. Not that it's been a significant concern, but, different cultures have different thoughts about mental health and seeking mental health. And there is still stigma in all cultures, but, certainly I have had a little bit of, concern with some international students that were, significantly having mental health issues and just afraid to tell their family, afraid to get services. They don't want their parents to find out. And that can be any student, really. But yeah, I think, going for help is help-seeking behaviors, although the trend has been significantly improved. But we still see barriers, and the barriers are real. And Darlene can talk about a new initiative that she's working on called Stigma that's helping to break down some of the barriers with our BIPOC and our students of color, perhaps being feeling more included or coming to counseling, feeling that they can be supported, through our counseling center. But definitely, I think there's still a lot of stigma and barriers. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, we still see, I think it's changed a lot in the 18 years I've been here. I think students coming in now have a better understanding of it's okay to get counseling. It's okay to get help. There's a high percentage of students that we see that have already had counseling before they even get to college. So they're very familiar with getting support when they need it. But culturally, there's still a lot of stigmas. I don't know if anybody's seen the commercials that they're doing now. They're trying to do this campaign that targets BIPOC individuals to say, like, there's this one commercial where there's 2 men of color in a gym, and one's got the barbell on his chest and he can't get it back up. And the other man comes over and says, "Here, let me help you." He's like, "No, I don't need help. I can't get help." It's okay to ask for help. "No, you don't know my family." Anybody seen that one? Anyway, yeah, I'm glad they're doing that, because that is what is happening. We see students who have this strong familial cultural belief that you just suck it up. You don't tell anybody your business. That's what we're families for. You don't have anything to be, so many of my students of color that come see me, their families say, "Well, you don't have any reason to be depressed. Why are you depressed? You've got everything in your life. You're not," and so I don't think that there's a lot of understanding about, in certain cultures, that it's universal. It's a human. You're human. So you have emotions. And if you're a human and you have a body, you can get ill. And if you're human and you have a brain, you can have mental illness. And so that is, I think, the biggest challenge for some students is admitting, like, I'm not really crazy. I don't need to talk to a shrink. Well, none of us here are shrinks. I mean, we do have a psychiatrist, but that's not the point. We're counselors and we're helpers, and that's what we do. And just, I think once they can get in here, if we can get students in here and then they see that makes a big difference. But there's still stigma, unfortunately, and there's still the belief that it's a weakness, that you should be able to just suck it up and, be strong.
Absolutely.
I think I can attest to that, just because my parents are Indian, and I feel like that stigma has been definitely associated. And I'm a psychology
Wow.
major, so it's definitely there's definitely a sort of stigma that I think is with them in terms of
Wow. Well,
this whole topic.
I mean, good for you
Yeah.
though, right? For trying to maybe break that a little bit. Being a psychology major, they must be like, what are you studying that for? You know,
Right, yeah,
sort of, I don't know.
right.
Exactly. And
But
let's go ahead. No,
no,
sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, no, it's definitely something that, I mean, when I was growing up, I definitely saw other kids and their parents, I feel like they had more of an emphasis on mental health compared to my parents, and seeing that, I was a bit envious of how they were, I guess, being, I guess, just brought up. So it's definitely very interesting now to see and kind of learn about all these topics and gain insight on how it's affecting students at Brockport in general.
Right.
Exactly. And when we see those barriers, like particularly for my instance, where, students are resistant maybe to go to counseling, well, maybe they would prefer to go counseling off campus. Maybe they feel that it's more private. There's kind of this misconception that their parents are going to find out if they show up in the counseling center. It's going to show up on their bill or something. So that's a real fear and barrier. But so I'll look at, what are your support systems? How can we support you, while you're thinking about going to counseling? What are your support systems? And many times I can work with the student to provide that initial support. And I'm not a therapist, nope. But I can certainly talk about, how things are going and connect them with the resources that are important for them. And another element is the little bit around masculinity and certain cultures, and it's not acceptable for men to have to go for help. It's, we see that, and I don't know your statistics at the counseling center, but we probably see more women seeking help seeking behaviors than men. And that's in general health, that's in physical, mental health, spiritual health, you name it. So I think we still have a lot of work around, masculinity, and teaching that it isn't, a negative thing for men to come forward. And I mean, that has to come from culture, from learning, some breaking down barriers. So we got a lot of work in that field.
Yeah, I was gonna ask a question about that because like I know my father is paralyzed from the knees down and he never really asked for help like with anything. And like I think that's part of like me not asking for help with stuff. Do you ever see that with like anybody ever come in like, I wish I asked for help earlier, but I see this happening. They don't need help and I'm just trying to get through it myself.
Absolutely. So particularly in other places that I've worked, and I worked with adults anywhere from, 20 to 90. And I'd see older adults come in and be like, I wish I would have known about this sooner, or I wish I would have gotten help sooner because I didn't realize how much it was affecting my life, my relationships, my family, my health. So yeah, so when students come in, I always give them props because look, you're at a stage in your life where you've got more life ahead of you than behind you, and you can make changes now to support ongoing wellness and whatever struggles you're having, like we can get through this. And then in the future, when you have struggles again, you always know that, hey, I remember that this was helpful, and not be afraid to get help.
And that may not necessarily be anyone's fault. I think that in general healthcare, we have very few dollars and very little on a national scale invested in prevention. And I mean, we certainly see like the monthly awareness, breast cancer awareness month, mental health awareness month. But what are we really seeing much more often about mental health and as far as nationally, and putting the prevention, it really is a tool of prevention to go and seek, help. It's and I think we need to do a better job, certainly on a national scale.
I think that is kind of associated with one of our questions, which was, is there actually a cure for this, I guess, sort of illness, or is it all sort of, I guess, just, you know, I guess, preventing it from happening in the first place?
That's a great question. And I did see that on here, and it's interesting because it depends. It depends on what mental illness you have, right? So again, I always use the analogy with physical health because I think people understand that pretty clearly. Like if someone has diabetes and they're diagnosed at 12, they're going to have diabetes their whole lives. There's no cure, but there's treatment and there's things that they can do to have a very healthy, productive, long life and just live, you know, within some different restrictions than maybe somebody who doesn't have diabetes. Same with mental illness. There's it's on a continuum, right? So some people have a brief, you know, period of time in their lives where they could be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder or a depressive disorder. And they get treatment and they manage and they get through it and they never have it again. Then there's people who have recurring episodes of a mental illness like depression. Major depression is one of the ones that comes to mind. Where that is recurring depressive episodes throughout a specific period of time. Maybe you have a depressive episode, you get through it and you're okay. And then something happens in your life 5 years later and it triggers the symptoms again and you have another episode. But again, it's treatable and you can maintain, you know, connections with providers to make sure you can try to prevent relapses, but life happens, right? But then you have the more serious mental illnesses, just like more serious physical illnesses, you know, like cancer. Some people get cancer and they go in remission. Some people get depression, they go in remission. Then there's those like schizophrenia, which is not really curable. It's treatable, but it's not curable. If someone's diagnosed with schizophrenia, they're pretty much going to have that forever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Of course.
Sure.
Do you guys ever have students come back and be like, wow, this like really helped me and I feel a lot better now and things like that? I feel like it'd be validating to
It's so
have people
validating.
that they
It's
feel better now.
It is. It's one of the most rewarding parts of the job, especially working in higher ed. So like I'll see a student, you know, they'll come in freshman year and we'll work together. And then maybe they come in a couple times in between, but then by the time they get to graduation, they're like, you know, look at me. It's so rewarding to see them manage through difficult times. And then I get sometimes emails and years later, here's pictures of my kids. I can't think, I still think of the time and how much you helped. And so, yeah, for sure. It's very rewarding.
Absolutely. I'll concur that.
I was also wondering if we could talk about a little bit of some of the programs and things like that that Brockport themselves has for mental health and like what different type of resources they offer and things like that.
Absolutely. Well, you know about our team now, which, you know, like I said, it's behind the scenes. So we're not out there on campus saying, hey, you know, send us students, but we also have a couple of things on our website. We have an Eagle Care Center, which I can send you the link. And it is much more than just mental health. It's comprehensive, you know, academic information, physical, mental health, spiritual health, you name it. But there's over 400 concerns. You can either access the concern, type in a concern that you have. And the really cool thing about it, it immediately explains what the concern is about and connects you to the campus or community resource. So it's a one-stop shop. I know our website is a big hot mess. It's hard to find stuff, right? So this center is specifically there for students to really get that quick access, find out what departments, and they can email that department right from that platform. So that's another thing that we have that's that is really, I think, is where it's meeting the students where they are on their computer, on the web, and getting them that immediate help. But Darlene has tons of programs over there.
So obviously, yeah, the counseling center is obviously one resource. It's not the only one though, but For counseling, for individual counseling, for group counseling, we have a psychiatrist on staff who does psych evals and who will make recommendations if somebody is in need of medication. We also work with the health center in that regard. We have providers that can prescribe antidepressants, for example. We do a lot of outreach. We do a lot of education and consultation with faculty and staff about mental health. We're trying to educate the campus community to recognize that taking care of students' mental health is not just the job of the counseling center. That there's very easy and simple ways that faculty and staff can just support a student. You don't have to be a therapist to do that. And Karen mentioned earlier about the Steve Fund. So the Steve Fund was started by a family of color who lost their son after he graduated from Harvard with a master's degree, and they lost him to suicide, and they wanted his death to mean something. So they started a comprehensive campaign to improve awareness and mental health services of college students of color, but they also go into K through 12 as well. So because we do know that our students of color are less likely to ask for help, they're more likely to experience mental health problems in college. And so we're partnering with the professionals at Steve Fund who are working with a core group of professionals on staff and students to look at our policies, to look at our services, to look at how we are approaching our students of color. So it's led to increased collaboration with different groups on campus, student groups, the Intercultural Center, community development, residential life, getting in there and really looking at like, how can we better support our students of color and their mental health and wellness. So yeah. I think that's it.
And you have a lot of groups. You have the one-on-one therapy, but you also have groups.
We do. Every semester we offer different groups, right? So this semester we're offering a support group for BIPOC students. We're offering a mindfulness group, which is teaching mindfulness skills. Mindfulness is a buzzword that maybe you've heard of. Really comes down to just being present in the moment and tolerating distress and regulating emotions in a way that's not disruptive to your life. We also have a grief and loss support group. And we are doing for the first time a yoga group for stress management, which is very popular.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I guess you have talked about these specific programs that Brockport offers. But I guess when did the traction towards mental health start at Brockport? Like when did this, I guess, importance and so I guess, yeah, that's basically my question.
Yeah. So, I mean, historically,
Darlene,
Karen's been here a little longer than me. So I don't know, maybe you want to start with.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, because I have been here 25 years and I can say very shortly into my tenure at Brockport. First of all, I started as a registered nurse in the health center. So, and I founded co-founded the health promotion department. So we did absolutely began that concentration on mental health. We used to do screenings, mental health screenings on campus, depression screening, alcohol screening, eating disorders screening, national screenings where we would have the student fill out the form and then we would have them talk with a counselor or a counselor ed student. So that was just the beginning because we knew students weren't coming to us. So that was the beginning of get out there, see what the students, see what is going on with the students. We came back with all this data. We also connected those students with a counselor right away so that they could start getting counseling because the awareness wasn't there like it is today. And I think the stigma was huge back then of, the counseling center and the health center. So that was a, really good initiative to kind of get us going, beginning that process. And then, oh my gosh, Darlene has done so much to increase our services, get more clinicians on board, get more staff. I mean, this has been a very concerted effort, very strategic effort to meet the needs of our students.
Yeah, we really have been. And thank you for that shout out, Karen. I appreciate it. I think in
Absolutely.
the time I've been here, when I started, there were only 2 professional counselors that worked here and me. And then we grew, and at one point we had like 6 or 7, and then people leave, and then the budget happens, and now I've got 4 with 1 open position. So if you can imagine, that's not a lot to meet the needs of all the students. But I will say that as since I've been here, I think mental health became more of a priority to the college administration when bad things would happen. So if we would have a suicide, or we had a death on campus, and we had a murder, and then we had, you know, all of the events happening in the world, and students and it started to trickle into the classroom, and professors are like, oh my God, what is happening? We don't know what to do with these students. They're not, you know, it just took a while for people to realize that like there's something going on, you have to address it. It's mental health related. And then the pandemic, the only gift of the pandemic, I think, is that it has brought increased awareness globally to mental health.
Yeah.
It has become, you know, pandemic has created a mental health crisis. And it has got to be treated as a public health issue. And so I'm fortunate, I'm glad that that's the case, because it brings more awareness, it decreases stigma, because I don't know anybody that's not affected by the pandemic. The trauma of it, some more than others. And so now we just have to try to find a way to meet the needs differently with what we have, because we definitely do not feel we are equipped just in our little counseling center to do that, because there's a lot of students, a lot of needs. So we're trying to train. So one of the initiatives coming out of our division is like trainings for faculty and staff on what's called mental health first aid. It's like CPR for mental health. You don't have to be a doctor to perform CPR, just like you don't have to be a therapist to do mental health first aid. And so, you know, the more people that get trained in that, I think the better we are able to support students in ways that are going to be helpful in retaining them and helping them achieve their goals.
That's a good point. And I think that's a role that counseling center has been pivotal in that crisis management when we've had those bad things happen. Counseling center just did a tremendous job of crisis management, really, and supporting the students.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Since the pandemic, I was just kind of wondering, have you guys seen faculty step up in a way because they were also affected by the pandemic? So maybe they realize, oh, I should care a little bit more about students and things like that.
Absolutely.
And take initiative.
Yeah. And I know Darlene gets a lot of calls from faculty, and I also get a lot of calls from faculty. Absolutely. I think we are getting just, you know, those calls, heads up, I don't know what to do. How can I support the student? And I'm also seeing, and I have seen the trend where faculty are also affected, that they may have their own, you know, issues that they're managing, and that it's, you know, I'm almost in a supportive role for both the faculty and the student. So I've also seen that the faculty have been impacted as well for their own emotional mental health. And so it's been very complex.
Yeah, I would agree with that in terms of, I'm sorry, so this is the day in the life of, I'm just getting texts about something related to the diversity conference and my staff, and nobody else is here but me. So I apologize. I don't want to.
Okay.
So you were talking about faculty being more understanding. So I was invited to do a presentation / have a conversation with all of the deans and the chairs of all of the departments last fall.
Cool.
And that was an amazing conversation, because I saw these tired human beings in the audience who were just like, we don't know what more to do. They have dealt with their own struggles with the pandemic, and then they're trying to understand their students while still being held to these standards that we still have to teach this content. So, and how do we know what we can do to help students and what's going to be helpful in supporting them? And I'm like, half the time, it's really just about listening, being present, and being as flexible as you can be without compromising the standards, you know.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we've seen a lot of students get some, I think Nikki Hall, so she's the director of student accessibility services. I think she's probably had more referrals this last year post-pandemic than that place has ever seen, because more students are now knowing that having a mental illness or a mental health condition is a disability, in the sense of sometimes it can benefit from some accommodations. So we're definitely steering students in that direction.
Yes.
Yeah. with the pandemic and everything, there was the semester where we were in there for like a month. We were in school for a month, and then the whole pandemic went to online. You
Yeah.
ever see like when the kids come back, there's just being in person for classes that's affecting them because they got so used to being online, and they maybe like that more. So when they come in person, it's like, I don't
Yeah.
want to be here. I'm like struggling with my work, you know?
Yes.
You ever do that?
Absolutely.
We have seen some of that. We've seen requests of students that they're in an in-person class and now they want to go remote, and that's very difficult because the pedagogy is established for the in-person class. So although in some circumstances we have been able to work with professors to meet that, and it's even beyond what SAS accommodation can do. So yes, we have seen the challenge of students getting up, getting dressed, and going to class that perhaps they never experienced before. So yeah, that definitely has had an impact in the classroom, and certainly an impact for students. And some students have, maybe chosen to take a leave of absence because they just weren't ready for that.
Yeah.
All their classes in person.
I still think no matter what they tell you, the pandemic may be like getting better in some regards. It's not over. And
Yeah.
the impact of the pandemic is not over. And people say, we just want to return to normal. There is no returning to normal.
I know exactly.
Post-pandemic world, y'all, it's never going to be what it was before 2020. Just isn't.
Yeah, yeah.
And so students that were struggling with learning online, I think when we think about that time, I think, it was March of 2020, and people were scared. People didn't always have access to technology. Teachers didn't know how to teach online. We didn't even have a platform to do sessions. We figured it out quickly, right? And then people get comfortable with that. And that really improved access for a lot of people. We didn't have to drive anywhere. We can get some. And now you're like, everybody come back and pretend like this didn't happen. And it's there's more social anxiety. Like students who maybe never had it are coming into this. I don't know how to be around people anymore. And it's just so there's so many layers to it.
Absolutely. And our freshmen who normally could make friends by going to all these events, they found that they weren't able to make friends. So here they are. They're back in their sophomore or junior year, and they really haven't established themselves on campus and connected with, maybe a club or organization or a group of students. In fact, I've seen over the past, as far as referrals for my team, is students really lack that social support. They didn't have the social support that they typically would have. So it definitely was very challenging. And now there was just on the news, many businesses, so it's not just higher ed, many businesses now want to go full back to offices 5 days a week in person. And the employees are pushing back. They're like, well, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to come back to the office 5 days a week. So we're seeing that on, in business on a national scale. Yeah.
I kind of relate to that a little bit because I transferred from St. John Fisher to Brockport as the pandemic occurred.
Oh, fun.
I've not been on campus until like the fall semester that just happened. And so definitely it's harder, I feel, at least from a personal experience to, like you said, join clubs or like friend groups and things like that. I mean, I do find in my classes, but I can definitely relate to how difficult it might be to kind of establish a solid base, a social base, when you don't really have an opportunity to.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, in the rest halls, we wouldn't let you have your friends over. We limited where you could go, what you could do, so these limitations have a huge effect. And then suddenly you've got this open, free, somewhat free environment. And it's a huge adjustment. But I do want to mention something that's kind of a higher level initiative that, so twice a year, the president has what's called a leadership summit. So it's the main leadership of the campus, all of our deans and chairs, and within our division, our directors, our AVPs. So we meet and we do a lot of strategic planning, but 2.5 years ago, I think I'm right, pre-pandemic.
January 2020, I think.
Okay.
Or was it
Oh,
20?
right.
Was it 19? Yeah, I think it was January.
The president and the cabinet, the leadership, the vice presidents chose mental health to be the focus of that leadership summit. So that's a big, big deal, for sure.
That was
The college did that, and Darlene did a wonderful presentation.
So did you.
Yeah, put on a great show.
Mhm.
But it was very good because I think a lot of the leadership in the room gained a lot of knowledge, and we, really made some good connections and partnerships. So,
Any other?
So have
Very
you
nice.
guys seen like other universities taking the same type of initiatives and things like that, or not really post-pandemic?
So there was this funding that was made available to all SUNY schools that was
Oh, yeah.
specifically targeted for mental health initiatives. And so all SUNY schools got a chunk of money. And
Mm.
so as far as I know, all SUNY schools are really, and there was also a task force I served on, the mental health task force at a SUNY level. And so SUNY is really paying attention to mental health.
Yeah.
I can't speak about the private schools as much,
Yeah.
but I'm sure they're doing their best as well, but.
Yeah, and I can say that SUNY as a large system really has led the way in a lot of issues, and mental health is one. Title IX sexual assault was another. I mean, SUNY was known nationally for their best practices in many of these fields. So as Darlene talked about this mental health initiative that was funded through the COVID relief dollars, a couple of things that we're doing on top of the Steve Fund is we have a mental health grant. So this is a grant for students who are experiencing financial, issues with trying to seek and access mental health. So these grants are up to $1,000. It'll help pay for their visits to a therapist or a provider, because many times your provider is who prescribes your medications. And, it can pay for the medications for mental health. It can pay for some of the basic needs. So we've had a good amount of applications for that grant. So we still have money to spend, and we have to have it spent by June 1st. So pass it on. We can send you the link to the website. But that's been a really successful initiative to really help students finance, their mental health.
Any other questions? Are we good?
I think we hit most of the big talking
Yeah.
points that we had together. I don't know if anybody else in my group has any questions or anything like
I
that.
think I'm all set. Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
All right, great.
That
Well,
was
thank you,
great.
guys.
Thank
Well,
you
thank you
guys
so
so
much.
much.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
thank
Good luck
you.
with your assignment. I hope it works out great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it'll be great.
Yeah, we
Sounds
want to see it when it's done.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Send it.
All right. Well, good luck, guys.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Good to
much.
see
You
you.
too.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.